how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm good. So you have released a technical exercise reliever heart book, which I bought as soon as it's released. And I usually am pretty good at telling my teacher, hey, I got this thing, let's work on it together. This is like the one thing I have hide from him right now because I was a little worried how hard he's gonna work me. So Josh, if you're watching this, I do own this book. We can work on it. Tell us about technical exercises. Why do we want to do technical exercises? And how is that different from doing, say, a warm up before we start our session?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So maybe let's start with that first one, actually, the difference between a warm up and a technical exercises. Because I think a lot of people use those terms interchangeably, and to me, they're completely different things. So a warm up for me is something that you do slowly and fully to exactly as it sounds, just to warm up the muscles in your fingers. But I mean, honestly, our hands are not huge. The muscles in them are quite small. It doesn't take very long. So, 5 minutes maybe at the very start of your practice, doing kind of very slow, methodical practice, slowly up some scales, slowly through some chords. That's plenty to warm up. But then what I find is a lot of people, I'll sort of say to them, okay, so now play me your C major scale. And I get this nice, beautiful scale and it sounds good and it's nice and everything's in the right place. And so then I say, okay, so now play it at double the speed. And then it starts to get a little bit sloppy. And now let's double speed again. And that's when you start to find the problem. So for me, the purpose of technical exercises is really it's about pushing your technique. It's not just about staying in your comfort zone. It's about making yourself a better harpist through finding out exactly where you are and then finding where the boundaries are that you need to push beyond. So finding kind of a lot of it is about building muscle memory and a lot of it's about building particular shapes. But most importantly for me, it's about that thing about trying to improve all the time and trying to get yourself to a better place as a player.
So, what would you consider as a technique when it comes to harp? So, what kind of topics is your book
Hmm.
covering?
So in this book, I think there's 15 different chapters that cover everything from it starts with kind of simple, and I say simple in quotations because everything has a layer of complexity, but things like crossing under, then building into scales, a lot on kind of chords and inversions and different patterns like that. And then it goes into things like slides, exercises for dexterity and finger independence. And then this is where it starts to kind of differ from a lot of the other books that are out there, which are for technique, is that then it goes into some really specific lever and particularly Celtic music techniques. So some of the ornamentation that we use a lot in Celtic music, things like that. So things like the cuts and triplets. It goes into techniques such as harmonics and left hand techniques. So again, some ones that are really specific to lever harp, some of the special damping techniques that we use a lot. And then the last section is about lever changes and slides and working with those. So kind of the first start part is quite generic to any type of harp, and then as it progresses on, it's more and more specific to the lever harp.
So, how is the book structured, and how do we go about using this book to practice our techniques?
Yeah, so within each chapter, this is the book in kind of the main form. So within each chapter, at the start of it, there's kind of a section which gives you particular tips and tricks about how to perform it. So things about what might be secrets to success, things to think about, things about hand position, particularly when it's things like the ornamentation, for instance, things that are more specific to technique that people can't really get necessarily from just seeing the music written out. It's kind of helping with those techniques and thinking about those, the feel of it. And then within each section, then there's kind of, it ranges from sort of 10 to 15 to 20 exercises for each chapter within that. So I think there's 156 exercises in total. But each one can kind of be drawn out in lots and lots of different ways.
So let's take one of these exercises as an example and walk us through, how would we get started with these exercises and how do we gradually make it more challenging and use it to build up our techniques?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to, if anyone has the book, we're going to look at page 25 and it's exercise 10 that's on that page. So this is an exercise that's going through some inversions and scales. It's kind of going through this combination. So what I would normally get somebody to do is, first of all, we're just going to simply learn the notes and doing that from what's on the page. So in this particular one, I'm just going to angle this down a little bit. We're starting on a first inversion C chord, okay? And we're going to go with fingers 3, 2, and 1 set on, fingers down, thumb nice and high, and we're going to work up the different inversions. So starting on a first inversion, to a second inversion, to a root position, and then up to the first inversion again. So that's kind of the first little thing that you're thinking about. So doing those inversions. So we'll do it again. And all the fingering is written in the book, so you don't need to kind of think about that. And then once we reach this top note, we're going to come down a scale. And the fingering that we're going to use is a set of 4, then a set of 3, a set of 3, and then a set of 4. And we'll end up on this D here. Okay, so that first line is going... What we're doing is then we're going to go up inversions of a G chord. Okay, so we've landed on this D. So the first shape we have is a second inversion G chord. So D, G, and B. So that's our first one. And then we're going to work up the G inversions. And then again, coming down a scale with the same fingering. So a group of 4, 3, 3, and 4. And that brings us back to middle C. Okay, so that's the first 2 lines. So we're going up C inversions from first inversion, down the scale, then up inversions of the G chord, and down the scale. Then we've reached that middle C, and now we're going to go up inversions of an F chord. So we're starting on C, F, A. And then working up the inversions, down the scale again with the same fingering, which brings us to a B. And now we're going to go up again inversions of a G chord, but this time we're starting on the first inversion rather than the second inversion. So and then our last bit is just a C arpeggio. So the first level of learning it would really just be to kind of get a grip of what's going on in it, getting that sense that every time you're coming down the scale, it's the same fingering that you're using, and that each time we're going up inversions. So then with a student, what I would get them to do is really start thinking, what I think is very important is to get these exercises off by heart as quickly as possible. So that's why all of them are pretty short, nothing is more than 16 bars or so, and they're all kind of have very clear patterns to them. So the reason I want them to get them off by memory is so that they're not glued to looking at a piece of paper, and instead they can be looking at their hands. And then it's starting to really engage with what I want the player to take away from this is this real understanding of the shapes of these inversions and what it feels like to play them. So the next level will be really engaging with what we're on. So I would get them to play it and say out loud, what are they playing? So first inversion C, second inversion C, root position C, first inversion C, and then down the scale. And then again saying it out loud. So they're on a second inversion G, a root, a first inversion G, a second inversion G, and then down. Then again, second inversion F, first inversion, second inversion, then first inversion G, second inversion, root G, first inversion, and a root position arpeggio. So that they're not just simply playing the notes or sort of saying, in theory, I know what these inversions are, but they're really kind of connecting the two all the time. So whatever the exercise is, I would recommend kind of doing that second. So learning it with the notes, then going through it and really saying what it is, and then just take the music away so that from this point onwards, you're working just from your memory. So then I would suggest that a player, once they've kind of got this really nice and steady and at a place where they can find a tempo where it all flows, I would suggest starting to add in some rhythms. So whenever we add in rhythms to an exercise, what that does is it forces certain things to be quicker together, and so we have to be able to do them faster. So for instance, if we put in a dotted rhythm into this, as soon as I put in that dot, I have to get the next finger set on quicker. Instead of having a nice amount of time, suddenly that set has to be faster. So it kind of challenges you that next little level. So I would do the whole exercise like that. And so on. Then I would maybe invert that. So instead of having the dot in the middle, I would just have the quick note at the start. So again, you're just forcing that. By doing that, your third and your second have to have much more independence between them. So that kind of works at another level. Then maybe something like doing long, short, short, long. So what you're doing by doing it in all these different ways is, first of all, it's meaning it's not getting boring for you. You're constantly challenging yourself, and something new is coming in each time. And then kind of without realizing it so much, you're forcing those little bits. So if you find that once you put in the dot, that set is not really going on, for instance, you might find that there's your problem. So then there's kind of two more levels that I recommend that people do. So on a piece like this, everything is connected in the tune. Everything has a setting in advance. And so what I find is that because what's so important with building good technique is this muscle memory thing. If you take away your vision, you really focus in on what your fingers are doing so much more. So the next stage, I would say, is to do that with your eyes shut. So kind of set it on and then shut your eyes and work up it. And make sure that everything is still exactly as it should be. And when you do that, you really focus in what does each of those invert. First of all, you have to check that you really know what you're doing. It's not just that you're sort of, you can look and see, but you really know, like, what's the difference between a root position, which is like that, and then a first inversion where that thumb's a little bit further, and a second inversion where that gap's a little bit bigger. You're really like honing in on the feel of what it feels like to do that. So that would kind of be the next level I would recommend doing. And then finally, I would start building the speed. So just like I said at the start, you don't want to play your scales always in a safe zone. Same with this. You don't want to just be playing it like in a nice safe way. Ideally, what you do is you find the maximum speed that you can play it at this point in time, and you work with your metronome. And then beside, I say this in the start, beside each exercise as I did it, I would write down the date and what speed I was playing it at, so that the next time I came back to it, I knew that I was trying to aim to get it a little bit higher and a little bit higher. So probably what I would recommend people do is, rather than kind of just pick an exercise and do it each day, I would choose maybe 3 exercises and spend a whole week on them, and each time try and build it up, so that ideally, by the end of this one, you can just sort of rattle up these shapes. And the idea with that is that then it means that when all pieces really ultimately are made up of inversions and scale patterns of some sort or other. So the idea is that you've met everything in an exercise, and you know already that you can play it in this wonderful, fluent, sort of fast, relaxed way, so that then when you actually meet it in a piece, and you've also got to think about rhythm and notes and dynamics and all the other things that come in a piece, it feels much more relaxed because you have that muscle memory already sort of started to build up.
That's a really good way to sort of isolate some of the more challenging aspect of a piece and work on it on its own, and then you don't have to worry about it when you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is why I think technique is so important. Is I just, I really think it's very difficult to improve your technique at the same time as learning a piece. Like when you're learning a piece, especially as you get more advanced, there's so much going on. Like, you've got all the coordination between your hands to think about. You've just got this string of notes that kind of keep changing to think about. You've got rhythm, you've got coordination, you've got phrasing. There's so many things, and you can't possibly also be thinking like fingers down, thumbs up, elbows out, all the things that you need, and thinking about how nice your cross unders are and all of that thing at the same time as doing it. It just becomes very difficult, and I think it's hard to ever for most people, the pieces that they're working on are already kind of at the boundary of their ability. So to also try and be improving your technique at the same time is very difficult. So if you can kind of take the technique work out and be doing that separately, then I think it kind of then feeds over into your pieces and hopefully becomes more fluent then.
And how often do you think we should be doing technical work? I'm gonna hunch this is gonna be a daily exercise for us, isn't it?
To be honest, yes. I think it's a thing that allows you to progress and to reach the next level. I see an awful lot of players who reach kind of an intermediate standard and then can never quite get beyond that. It just never really gets there, and so and it's fine because there's an awful lot of lovely intermediate repertoire out there, and they sort of stay in this lovely safe zone. And I find a lot of people, for instance, avoid playing fast music. They just sort of say, oh, I don't really play fast music. I don't do that. I can't. And what they really mean is I can't do it. Um, and so I think that if you do want to feel an improvement, first of all, I think that especially by recording where you are in terms of speed and things like that all the time, it's very motivating because you see yourself progress in a very, very clear way. Like you can see where you were and you can see where you've got to, and you can set yourself targets and goals. So I think especially for adult learners, that's hugely motivating to see that. But second of all, and this, it's not that playing fast is the be all and end all by any means. Like there's, being able to play slowly and beautifully is just as important. But I think there is a thing where you can never expect to be able to play fast music, jigs and reels and things like that if your fingers aren't used to moving fast. It's a little bit like you would never expect a sprinter to get faster by only running marathons. Like in both ways they would be very fit, but it's not the same. And equally, you wouldn't want a marathon runner to train only by sprinting. So you've got to do the technical work for what it is that you want to be able to do. And if the reality is that you want to be able to play faster, then the technique work is the place to practice. Like your hands have to be used to moving faster and to doing those things like the cross unders. Like that's often a bit where people start to kind of slow down. So in this first exercise, I think a lot of people would look at it and be like, oh, that looks very easy. I don't need to do this exercise. But actually, if you push yourself on it, you'll start to find where are the limitations of your technique and where does it start to fall apart. And then you can kind of progress from there.
Yeah. And I can relate to this in a personal way because I was working on a advanced piece with my teacher, and there was a section that involved finger independence. And once I hit there, I basically come to the conclusion, well, the teacher came to the conclusion that we need to spend some time working on finger independence before I can even continue on the piece. So I can see using some of the exercises in this book and sort of training myself ahead before I tackle the piece.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like another really common one is harmonics. There's a lot of people who just sort of like, oh, harmonics, they just sort of never work. And it's because so often we just get we get a piece and there's one little harmonic at the end, or there's a couple in the piece and then you don't play any for ages. And then it's no wonder that they never feel good or feel comfortable because we can't expect that something that we only play once in a blue moon is ever going to be good. Whereas if you do, like, there's kind of whole exercises in this where you're just doing a whole 16 bars all in harmonics, and if you've gone through that for a week, like, you're going to be really confident in your harmonics by the end of it because you've taken the time to focus in on that thing. So then it's not getting to the end of the piece and thinking like, oh goodness, I know that there's a harmonic at the end and it might be terrible. Like, you've kind of tackled that before and it's just like, oh yeah, harmonic, no problem. That's sort of where I want people to be at with their playing, where everything it feels really second nature, and they feel really comfortable with their instrument, and then they just get to think about the musicality of the pieces that they're playing.
That makes a lot of sense. Where can we buy this book?
So a couple of places. Probably the most direct is right on my website. My webpage. So aileyrobertson.com, and there's two ways you can buy it. You can either get the hard copy version, which is spiral bound and everything, so it'll lie nice and flat on your music stand, or there's a PDF version that you can get.
That's the one I have. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's some other places like Kamak are stocking it now. Harp.com are stocking it. Harp Column, places like that. So you'll be able to find it in other places as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much for walking us through this book, and I'm looking forward to spending some quality time with some of these exercises, and I'll have to let you know how those go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, please do. And then yes, I think like the biggest takeaway is that, like, don't rush through the exercises. Stretch each one out. Like, think about really getting your money's worth in any book. I mean, there are a lot of exercises in it, but like you can spend so much time on one thing, just exploring all the possibilities within it. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. Like use all the levels that 16 bars can give you, and really stretch it out to
Yeah.
push to the next level.
Yeah, I was really amazed by how much you can do with just that one exercise that you have demonstrated to us.
Yeah,
In
absolutely. I mean, I could spend like a 2 hour session on just that one exercise, for instance. But
yeah.
yeah, it's amazing how much you can do with one thing.
And I really like the suggestions of noting down sort of where you are at what speed with each exercise, and being able to see that growth over time. So that's also a really good
Yeah,
suggestion.
absolutely. It's definitely so much of, for adult learners, so much of the motivation comes from being able to see that you've gone from A to B. And I think sometimes, again, that's why with pieces, you sort of tick off a piece, but you're not necessarily seeing a very linear improvement over time. Whereas again, things like this, it helps you really track your progress and see, like, oh yeah, back in January, I was only able to play this at 60 and now I'm up at 110. And that's really motivating to see.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I hope our audience is going to enjoy working out with this technique books as well.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.